Now, to come back to Rousseau, Rousseau is against the aristocracy, he's against the monarchy and all of that hierarchy and privilege, right? That privilege concept is a hot concept in the 1700s, but he's also against the Enlightenment. He's against the English Enlightenment, hates John Locke. He's a bitter foe of Voltaire. Mm-hmm. You read some of the exchanges between the two of them, it's quite scatological. I don't know, Voltaire writes that reading Rousseau makes him want to throw all of his clothes off and go back to crawling on all fours in the dirt again. Right? So, right, and then Rousseau responds with all kinds of insults, right, as well. So the point is that he is opposed to everything that the Enlightenment conception of what modernity can and should be. And Rousseau is an opponent of that. You see the emphasis on reason and empirical knowledge that the Enlightenment philosophers are developing. Now, sure, some of them are more rationalistic and so forth, but Rousseau is opposed to reason. Right? He thinks it's an after the fact, weaker facility, that we should be passionate and emotion driven, right, and so forth. He also understands that a lot of the arguments, this is also the heyday of natural theology, a lot of the arguments with respect to religion are undercutting traditional religion. And much of the push among the Enlightenment thinkers is toward the separation of church and state. Rousseau is opposed to the separation of church and state. Now, it's true he doesn't want to just go back to old-fashioned traditional religion. He wants a kind of a more sanitized, state-run, modernized religion, but nonetheless, there's not going to be any separation of church and state, and he's quite explicitly saying there will be execution if you publicly go against whatever the new state religion is going to be. The Enlightenment is all about free speech. People need to be able to think for themselves, read for themselves, argue about all of these very important ideas in politics and religion and so forth. And Rousseau is saying absolutely not. We are going to have censorship of the press. Freedom of the press is one of the most disastrous things that has possibly happened. The Enlightenment is celebrating the arts and all of the participatory arts. Jean Jacques Rousseau, perhaps in a nod to his Calvinist Genevan roots, wants to shut down the theaters, right, and so forth. He hates science. He hates modern developments in the arts, and the whole idea that somehow human beings are making moral progress as a result of the Enlightenment and figuring out the way the world works. He thinks, in fact, the opposite of that is true. Science and the arts are corrupting us, making us worse and worse, and we need not to go back to the old hierarchies of feudalism and, king and church and state and high aristocracy and monarchy, but also this idea of individualism and freedom and people going their own way and this progressive vision of society. He hates all of that. And really what he is in favor of is a new kind of primitivism, that in some sense, we can't go back to the good old days of the Garden of Eden, however much we secularize that, or to early man, but we can go back to some sort of pre-scientific, pre-civilized tribal state of human beings, in which we are extraordinarily communal, and we're not trying to do our own thing and be uppity with respect to each other. And so it's modern, primitive, egalitarian, back to nature, and that's what Rousseau is all about. So what we then really have in the modern world is, of course, there are conservatives who do want to go back to the good old days, who thinks all of modernity is a mistake, but really do have then a kind of a three-way battle between those who are in favor of the Enlightenment and see it as a progressive, pro-science, pro-individual, pro-reason, pro-arts and culture development, and those who are like Rousseau, heavily tribal, or the Rousseauians, I need to generalize it now, and have a very different egalitarian, but then at the same time a state-run, at a localized level understanding of what modern society should develop into.